Welcome to our new episode in the Becoming Breath, the podcast. Here with me, Katja. My name is Sanni, and today we're going to talk about myth and the breath. This, I believe, is for both of us a very fascinating
Yeah.
topic. It's 27th December, this day, today that we are recording. A very potent time for talking about breath, as always.
As
But
always, yeah. I
maybe,
was like, is there no potent time to talk about breath?
but these are some sacred days, at least for me, in the kind of dwelling in a very good way, the exhalation. So resting more and really noticing that place at the bottom of the exhalation, that coming back and that charge that the breath also gives. Like after some days of this kind of cocooning, there is usually some kind of inspiration. So there is the movement is very tangible, at least in my life
Mm-hmm.
and in my body, where there's like exhalation, 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 the bottom of the exhalation, and there starts to be again the cycle becomes very tangible. How are these days for you, Katja? And do you have an example that you want to start with? Maybe.
Yeah. I've been thinking about the same. Because when I was working in corporate, there's this like natural pull to into darkness and sleep more and eat more and cocoon. And there's like very natural movement that is underneath like normal, quote unquote, normal life appearances. And in corporate, you don't get to do that. And I remember like every year, this time would feel so weird to me because there was like kind of a very natural expectation for me. Like now it's gonna come, now it's gonna come, now the rest is gonna come, now the rest is gonna come. And then like boom, and here we go again. 2nd of January, everything kind of like nothing ever happened. So it was super weird experience for me, a big discrepancy between what I refer to as the layer of appearances and the layer of life substance. And when the layer of life substance like really slows down and goes inward, and there's some, like cozy rituals and things you would want to do during this time of year, and there's a huge discrepancy between what is happening at the layer of appearances and expectations and how it's supposed to, like according to societal rules and all the things. And so last couple of years for me, it was very different. And this year it was extra very different, because I was during the actual winter solstice, 21st of December, and before that and after that, I was teaching and facilitating so much. It really felt like it was nonstop. In human time, in in Kronos time, it was like just quote unquote 4 days of nonstop, like being really in it. Of it really felt like it was just hundreds of years of nonstop somewhere. I spent this time somewhere else for sure. And at the end of those 4 days, I think it was 22nd of December. I kind of like, okay, now everything stopped. And now what? And I found myself in such a weird place. I was so exhausted physically, so expanded on any other aspect of my experience. And then there's this natural movement of life substance. And then there's also some societal expectations. And I found myself in this big whirlpool vortex of things, and kind of differentiation also on what's important and what do I need and what is needed for me to integrate those 4 days that felt really like 4 years at least of the deepest body work ever. So yeah. And at this point on December 27th, I'm like, what am I even? What is happening? What are my coordinates? So I kind of find myself being very oriented to feeling very disoriented, because throughout this time I've discovered also so much new terrain, and there's been many more, how would I call it, kind of the mapping of the territory that I can navigate now more on purpose and by choice. So currently I'm in the place and the coordinates of being like, whoa, what
Mm.
is even happening?
Mm.
And something that I refer to a lot, my students know this really well. There's this cartoon made by Tim Burton, Nightmare Before Christmas.
Mm.
And Jack Skellington, he gets from the Halloween place into the Christmas town. And the first time he sees the Christmas town is like completely new territory and all the lights and people laughing. And there's this song that I love so much. It's kind of this is now the soundtrack in my head. What's this? What's this? And he goes like, and everything's like, ooh, what's this? What's this? So this is me right now.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. That's very interesting. I For me this time, well, in any time of the year, in the anywhere in the cycle, also anywhere in the breathing cycle, there is always a direction. There is always a movement.
Mm-hmm.
Direction. And as I started with the exhalation and that kind of a return and cocooning and that resting, that has always felt too short for me. And I completely disagree at this point. Maybe next year I disagree with my disagreement now, but that that the winter solstice and this time is celebration of light, return. For me, this is something completely else. It's
Mm-hmm.
like and that the light would bring the hope. Like
Mm.
how I think we're a little bit messed up in this, that the
Yes.
darkness is still, even though now we understand much better how much rest means and how much we need that downtime. But
Mm-hmm.
still, even then there is this like conditioning of, yeah, darkness is important, rest is important. But I'm
But
hoping
yeah,
the light is
yeah, yeah.
coming. Like, and I read yesterday a very interesting article that was kind of an external validation for my like, yes, because it was about Norse mythology and Norse and Scandinavian traditions, where it seems that the Jule is in Norwegian and in Swedish Christmas, and Jule is kind of the old word for the Christmas time. In modern times, there's an idea that the Jule should be celebrated on winter solstice, where the Jule is actually a feast. It's a celebration.
Mhm.
But now in this article, it was like a very detailed article about that the Yule time actually in ancient times was in January, February. So it was much
Mm.
after the
Mhm.
darkness, the kind of stop. And then after that, so in that regards, I find that the New Year celebration, for example, in Russia, there is the 5th, the 6th, 7th, 14th, like
Mhm.
much
Mhm.
closer to the celebration of, okay, now the light is slowly
Yeah.
returning,
Yeah.
and there
Yeah.
was much longer cocooning time
Mhm.
for the actual celebration of the feast and the expansion again. So I was so happy. I was like, "Oh, this validates my experience." So like this is
Yeah.
how I really feel that it should be in our society as well. Mm.
And the modern culture in general, we kind of overly obsessed with light. Yeah, the whole spiritual scene is the love and light, kind of the mainstreamy, right? Love and light and return of light and everything like aliveness is being equalized to light.
Yeah, and activity.
And yeah, and activity, exactly. And we go into the dark so that da da
Mm.
da da da, right? We go into this cocooning so that we can come again and have this wave of yeah, I don't know, like activation and light and creation. There's always this so that
Yeah,
attached.
yeah. It's very
And
funny.
something, yeah, and something that I challenge my students all the time is like, what if there's no so that, but it's just a very natural. order of things. That's it. There is no so that.
Mm.
And it
Yeah.
kind of messes with people's heads a lot because they try to, try to understand it mentally. I was like, what do you mean? Like, okay, so how do I do this then? Like, it's kind of a complete, like a full, complete reorientation in how do you relate to a movement of life.
Mm. Yeah.
And again, to me, it is a movement from the layer of appearances into layer of life substance. And when we are in the layer of life substance, there's also much less slash none of this like grippiness in like I must get it mentally, I must understand, I must know exactly how to do this right so that dot dot dot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hmm. And this brings my thoughts into the myth. And we are here trying to, or talking quite freely. Not
Mm.
we don't have a plan about this topic, so we are kind of crossing the myth and the breath and then some ideas around it. But myth is something that um, it doesn't have a so that, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
because when we enter that layer or that world or that kind of patterning and that kind of way of looking at the world and life in general, it is self-explanatory. It is kind of a happening in it, so that it like the so
So
that
that.
and the mental loses its meaning, which
Yeah.
I find it super 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 interesting. And I've been watching Stranger Things
Mm.
now, and I find it's a wonderful myth, and it's a wonderful description of the psyche
Mm-hmm.
and the whole consciousness. And then I read reviews of like, this is a basic sci-fi series with this and that and that. I'm like, what? And the same applies to so many other things. Harry Potter, like
Same,
these
same,
these
same. Yeah.
stories that really catch and capture our whole attention, the books that we could just like continue reading and we
Mm-hmm.
cannot like put it down, because it is living in us while we are in it, so we become it.
Yeah. Well, we could. Not always. Depends on the coordinates.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But myth become in my opinion brings us very it, yeah, not always, but into this trance state, and allows us to
Mm-hmm.
traverse.
Mm-hmm. And it depends on the coordinates.
You ruined this for me.
Yeah, but this is
No,
like
I
like your
understand. Mm.
example of people writing reviews of Stranger Things being like a basic sci-fi da da da. Those are literal coordinates of perceiving the same archetypal story, which it is an archetypal story, right? The relationship between this world and the other world, the upside down, and all these metaphors that are actually not metaphors.
Mm,
And when we perceive that story, archetypal story, from a very literal point of view, then it becomes a basic sci-fi that means
mm.
nothing.
Yeah, but I claim that also the people who write about this, like, and put it into a paper sounding like,
Mhm.
this comes from my mental, very pragmatic mental state, while they are in it, they are captured by, like, they cannot
Mhm.
resist it. But it's
Mhm.
when we try to make sense out of it, that's the process where we kind of lose
Mhm.
that lose
Mhm.
that. And actually this is again one beautiful bridge into breath and explaining many things that we talk in this podcast. Like, we lose something in here, we lose something, we try to make sense of it, and we go a bit array, in my opinion, in many cases, where the breath becomes a technique or a protocol and all that. Um,
Yep. Absolutely. 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 And this is like the loss of meaning happens when we try to make sense out of this like shape-shifty, kaleidoscopic, multiple experience through a very flat and narrow mental way of understanding of things.
hmm,
And
Yeah.
this is like also what happened this 3 days that I was teaching subtle perception course together with my mentor. And the way how I teach is a very it's very imaginal. It's very like if you would try to make sense with and rationalize things, you would fail for sure. And this is what I want people to try, fail, and be like, wait, what is happening? Like I need to be here in a different way. So right, there's like a meta wave of experience. And then there was like several waves of people trying to like so like what exactly do you mean by this? Can you explain again? And I was like, no. Not explaining this because this is kind of the whole point. The meaning and the meaning, and again, you and I like we love bringing every topic into the meaning of life, because the meaning of life is exactly there in the felt layer of life substance when we make sense out of it through senses, not through mental like let's hammer it down to mental concepts and frameworks and make it like a category and a step by step something same as like one would read fairy tales and myth and watch Stranger Things.
Mm. Yeah.
Exactly same.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. And it is, how would I say? I find that myth and this kind of stories and fairy tales, for many seem a bit like an escape from reality rather than being like bringing them
In it,
into,
yeah.
which is such a shame.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because they are not something that are separate from us, but they are they are it, and they are, as I studied, the some kind of underlying patterns and patternings and movement directions that we tend to live
Mm-hmm.
through in
Mm-hmm.
our lives. So I like to say that we all have a myth, but we just don't know. We just don't know about it, or we are not aware
Mm-hmm.
about it. And quite often the myth is this, unfortunately, maybe the kind of the scientific materialistic worldview that is based on, yeah, we're nothing more than the, the
Mm-hmm.
flesh and the bones, um, which, can help us to understand things, but for sure doesn't help us to understand the meaning of life. We come back to that. And I I also claim that doesn't help us in, for example, in working with the breath in its full capacity, or working with the body or the mind. Any kind of, for example, therapeutic modality.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that this kind of myth that we live through and tend to rely on is very very helpful. So the expansion or the bringing in or the resourcing, I don't even know what word to use here, is something that I would I would really recommend for everyone, so that the rich, like the enrichment of the work can also happen, spread and reverberate further. Mm.
Yeah. And yesterday I wrote an article about how every cosmology, not doesn't matter where it comes from, it is a body cosmology.
Mm.
And we like exactly also what you said, it kind of tends to become this mental escape and mental fantasy versus a way of us interacting and participating with the living world, which is to me is also because when I was little, I used to do this. This is basically how I survived my childhood, um, because that was the only way for me to make sense out of like a series of without going like into my history and stuff, to make sense out of like horrific events without losing my mind. So I was losing my mind through myth on purpose. And that was enriching and making meaning of things, not a bypass, right? Also, like a big, huge difference here.
Mm.
Bypassing something and being like ignorant to some difficulty or whatever, versus being in this, mm, how would I even call this? Like words will fail always in describing this, right? But like the richness of and depths of ways of interaction and being in this participatory relationship with the actual felt living, breathing life, not as construct, not as mental construct of like what is life. Because I find also that most people don't have, which is again, this is not a like a shaming, like shame on you. Why don't you have this? But this is something that is being trained out of us since we were little, since school and preschool and whatever. Kind of the whole society is Western society is built around making people very predictable and compliant. And how do we do this? We remove life substance and we live and we create this layer of appearances where looks are very important, where progress is very linear, where, like all this kind of the expectations and how you should live your life
Mm.
completely removed out of life substance, completely like this, the relationship with life as a felt. It's for me, it is an actual felt way, like I can feel it in my body. It is a very somatic, it's a very mythosomatic experience of life moving through me.
Mm. Yes.
And there's like a breath of life actually moving through me, around me. And it gets trained out of us completely. And then we begin to perceive myth or stranger things or whatever it is from a very mental, abstracted layer of nothing.
Mm. Mm.
And this is where it becomes empty, when it becomes an escape, when it becomes like a Netflix and chill, right? It becomes kind of, it goes into this emptiness.
Mm.
It
Yeah.
becomes kind of a shell of a entertainment, and it's empty. But actually what it entails is so, so, so much more. There's like an archetypal wave of life. And
Mm.
when the body is able to tap into it and live it and become it,
Mm.
and there's a whole breath, like a much bigger breath that becomes available. Yeah, the full cycle of breath.
Mm.
To me, it's the most beautiful thing ever.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I once heard, like, apropos breath, once heard that controlling the breath is the easiest way of controlling a person. And and if we talk about people like mass people like army or this kind of like
Mm.
rhythm, and the breath being somehow put into compliance. So there is maybe something something to think
That
about.
is actually very, very sad.
It's very, very
And
sad.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. The myth in general. What is a myth, and why we use our time talking about it?
what is a myth? To me, myth is it goes like way beyond a storytelling situation. Lately, for some reason, I've been having quite a lot of conversations with people who have mostly females, actually, which is also very interesting. um, it will become clear in a moment. Um, who had experience, who like feel this hunger. There's something also that I refer to as mythic hunger, who hunger for this different relationship with life and reality. And they, uh, and myself included, right? We kind of end up in storytelling circles, in like myth telling circles with mostly males. And then the experience of it also becomes very kind of a more linear, more solar, more like my experience is just like it just goes on and on and on and on, and there is no cycle of nothing. There is no preparation, there's no beginning, there's no integration. It's just like we go on and on and on and on. And there's no cyclical nature around it. There is no room for like this imaginal meanderings around anything. um and then it kind of becomes same-ish um, in terms of like watching Stranger Things, is it like a basic sci-fi, or is it the most archetypal movement you get to live in this body, right?
Mm.
Both.
Yeah.
And then it becomes this kind of a basic, yeah, it's a story, nice, cool, okay, next. Um, and to me, myth goes so much deeper. To me, myth and cosmology of, again, from anywhere, cosmology is an attempt to kind of package this experience of life and to make sense out of life and make sense out of this human body through language that is not linear, that is not categorical. And so it needs to be perceived also not from a place of linearity and literalism and categories. Myth is not a metaphor. Something that also, like, sometimes when I speak about it, people find it hard to mentally understand. Like, it is a metaphor. Like, no, it's not a metaphor. It is an actual, very, very practical um, instruction on how to live life in this human body. And if you really read it, like really read it from a layer of life substance, again, versus layer of appearances and emptiness and empty words, when you really read it from the place of life substance, those are actual instructions
Hmm.
on how to participate with life, on how to participate with supernatural forces, on how to participate with natural forces, on how to be in this human body, like how to take care of ourselves in a much like richer way, richer, deeper. I'm just looking for words as well here because this is so. It kind of, you feel the substance, but then you try to put it in words, and it goes like boom, empty.
Hmm.
um, right? It's to me, myth is instructions,
Hmm.
but only if you are willing and able to perceive it from different coordinates.
Hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
Hmm.
And myth for me is breathing. It is something that is full of breath.
Yeah,
Every
yeah.
increment of it, not just like, okay, inhale, exhale, there is the basic cycle, but there is nuance. And myth, in my opinion, is also a way of becoming breath, or
Mm-hmm.
this traversing this uh, trans kind of
Mm-hmm.
soup that that we sometimes need to go through, especially if the changing the coordinates, like you say it,
Mm-hmm.
should happen before it can really be an instruction for life. So yes, absolutely. Mm. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it is, I think we have mentioned in this podcast, it is very shame that myth is being used as a, and I actually catch myself, like I talk sometimes about breathing myths. And I'm like, "Oh, I need to
No, no,
complete."
no, no.
I now I'm reorienting to like, okay, I have
Yeah.
so much to say about breathing myths, but they are better than the breathing myths that I myths that I have been talking about before. How we kind of like perceive myth as something, or understand myth as something that is not real.
Mm-hmm. And this is like one of my missions. I'm so very passionate about it too. We need to stop using the word myth or fairy tale as opposite for reality.
Mm,
Myth is not opposite. The opposite of myth is literalism, is flatness, is emptiness. But myth and reality, they don't even belong on one continuum. Like how did we end up putting
yeah.
them together as opposites on one continuum of things? They don't even belong on one continuum because myth and fairy tale is a way of perception
Mm,
of reality. It is a way of co-creation of reality and being like I speak a lot in my teachings about the imaginal condition or mythic condition of a human body, And being in imaginal condition, in the mythic condition, is being able and capable to co-create your reality moment by moment by moment, and being oriented moment by moment by moment, in many different fields and aspects as well, not just the physical. Something that it's also like very often, especially like this whole discourse around you gotta be present, da da da. Ugh, I'm like, ugh, because being present in the physical body, being present in the physical surroundings, in the environment is just one aspect of this as well. We
Mm,
can be present and oriented in many different fields at the same time.
mm,
And we can be in co-creation through many different aspects and in many different fields at the same time, moment by moment. And this is, to me, is mythic condition.
mm,
When we kind of expand through time and space, even from this flatness, emptiness, when life seems pointless very often. Right, I hear people say this all the time. It's like, what is the point of any of this even? The whole situation of the world is horrific. Body is struggling. There are symptoms. Like, what is happening? I'm doing all the good stuff. Like, I'm taking care of myself and all possible, I don't know, biohackings and whatever, whatnot. Doing like breathing stuff and la la. Nothing is working. Body is still struggling. Like, what is the point?
mm,
It is not EE, not effortless, effective, efficient, right?
mm,
But effortless, effective, efficient is a coordinates. It is an actual place to stand in. It is
mm,
not the avoidance of friction. It is not the avoidance of difficulty. It's the way how I am able to co-create my reality moment by moment by moment.
mm,
Which is, again, you try to understand it mentally, you will fail for sure.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I find that these new coordinates or the whole journey there, however you want to describe it, requires understanding of cosmology and mythology, and
Mm-hmm.
you almost like maybe I don't say that you need to tie it to something that is easiest for you to understand. And nowadays many have started from the Indian mythology and Indian continent, like the cosmology that is there, because it's quite
Mm-hmm.
well written about, and there is good access to it. But I'm from Finland. We have a wonderful cosmology. Norse mythology is
Mm-hmm.
one way. So maybe, looking into something that fine for you is, or for us is the easiest to access and easiest to understand, because then the doors will open up to understand all of them. Not that you need to, go into depth of everything, but, getting an access to, like, wow, like, and that resonates. It is a very,
Mm-hmm.
very,
Mm-hmm.
it's a somatic. It's something that, resonates in the body. It's not just something, okay, I'm reading this fairy tale or story, or
Mm-hmm.
trying to understand it, but it resonates. And usually in all of these traditions, cosmologies, mythologies, there are also practices that can be accompanied, but that's not necessarily needed for you to understand it. I mean, understand it in, like, as a lived experience,
Mm-hmm.
but it might be for sure helpful. And ritual is a practice. I mean, ritual is a
Mm-hmm.
is a beautiful practice that brings it into the flesh and bone as well, and the
Mm-hmm.
physical body. Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just, as you were speaking about like finding your entry point, um, I've noticed that this past weeks, like maybe a couple of weeks, and definitely through this 4 days of, I don't even know how to call them, like 4 days of baptism through fire and water and whatnot. It really felt like me jumping through like one cauldron with boiling water to boiling oil to ice water to whatever, um, one after the next after the next and that. And throughout all of that, there's been like a bigger breath happening for me as well. And there's been orienting also to the self and a big wave of melting of self and a big return breath to self. And this might sound like very abstract and bacon, like, what do you mean even? Right? But again, you gotta listen to this and you gotta feel into this from very different place. And I often very often, right? If like for those who are listening to this podcast, like or those who study with me, for sure, you heard me say the word coordinates so very often. Maybe it will be the word for my 2026. It's a good one, actually. Um, when I speak about coordinates, I speak to an actual place, and a place that goes also beyond the physical place, because the physical place perception is also a very narrow, like one point perception of a range of a whole, like multi experience of place. And then, right, for me, those days and being so very tired. I've haven't been so tired for many years of my life, right? And I texted you as well. I was like, I'm so tired that I'm on the point of giving up everything, and I also know that this like thought form of giving up everything only comes because I am so exhausted. So there's no actual, like, it's not an action, it's a thought form, but the action beneath the thought form of giving up everything is a kind of coming so close to the edge of like everything, my capacity, my ability to think. Even at one point I was like, I know I'm brain dead, I think, for forever. um right, being so close to the edge of me, of what is the self right now, and being able to be oriented there and being able to co-create there at this edge, that was what created for me the possibility and new coordinates and new maps and this big return breath and big wave of melting of self. And there was a moment which, in my perception, also might have taken a long time or a short time or even longer time, who knows. But there was a moment that, like, suddenly, but not suddenly, my map of self became so much bigger. Was I, like, at this moment also, like, orienting to a bigger breath of being completely on the edge of everything, like almost collapsing with tears, like I cannot do anything anymore. Would I, at that moment, would I be like, okay, let's fix this? You know, how do I fix this? How do I make it better? Like, oh, I need to do this so that dot 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 dot. Right? None of that would be very helpful for me. Like, and I've done enough of this, and I've like for years now that know I need to be in relationship moment by moment there at that edge, which felt really like I was scared. At some point I was like, oh, what is happening? And am I able? At some point I didn't think I was able anymore.
Mm.
And there was support from a mentor, support from husband, for support from my people. I was like, yeah, sure. Like, we're going. Yes, you are like extremely done and tired, and there's breath. So yeah. I don't know if any of this makes sense. It makes sense in terms of my cosmology, the
Mm.
cosmology of self, right? This bigger movement of life. And how am I in co-creation with that? And am I in co-creation with that? That's
Mm.
kind of, for me, the whole point.
Yeah, and for me, this is a beautiful example of the cyclic nature of everything, and also the name of the podcast, or the how we describe it, at the on the edge of inhalation and exhalation.
Mhm.
You know, it's
Mhm.
it's quite a lot about the the edges and the turning points, and that exact moment where expansion is not just a small one, but
Mhm.
actually like a
Mhm.
like a completely, 180 turn of like everything looking
Mhm.
very different from the moment before.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, for sure, this might sound abstract, but as I experience, and I also find it very touching in my experience to live with the words and kind of as we often say, listen through them rather than
Mhm.
to them.
Mhm.
So that it becomes something that you're actually like living with, embodying, because then you can embody the principle. I don't like to call it principle, but maybe maybe the myth that, or the, some kind of instruction that is that is also here
Mhm.
in the car. Yeah, we a few times we have mentioned that the myth is a way of traversing. Mantra as well is music in general, but mantra, to me, is also something that is a packaged,
Mhm.
knowledge that you
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
that you use, or it's not even just like reciting the mantra, but really, let that resonate through you.
Yeah.
It's maybe more the better way of saying it. And um, I just want to share a beautiful mantra, myth, and breath that all come together in the form of a swan. So in Sanskrit, the mantra, the name in Sanskrit, swan is Hamsa, Hum and Sa, and they are often pictured in this, like, the one wing of the swan is Hum, and the other
Mm.
one is Sa. And quite often in different meditation, or in this kind of meditation practice, that would be like inhalation and exhalation. So our every breath is reciting, living true, embodying the mantra of the swan, of the bird. And the bird, again, like, I'm not going all the way to the to layers and layers and layers, but of
Mhm.
course the bird and the swan there carries carries a meaning as well. But the reciting on the mantra of Hamsa, inhalations and exhalations. Again, if you are listening to this, you can maybe live this true. You can inhale and exhale and let the wings float in the air. Maybe the swan is gliding, sliding, moving in the water. And then the beauty here is that the opposite, and in myths, this is usually one truth as well, that the opposite is as true as the thing. The opposite of it is as true. Soham, I am, is Hamsa and Soham, the same syllables, and it becomes I am. So with every breath, the breath is who you are. Every breath, you are singing the song of who you are. You're reciting the mantra of the swan, of the bird, and of your essence. And yes, we have the breath there. We have the mantra there. We have a meaning there. We have a beautiful, beautiful package of the essence and the cycle and all that, all what it brings about in your life, in our lives, in the world is there as well. I feel we are complete here.
Well,
Oh.
this is very beautiful point of not a point, but a spiral of completion.
Mm, yes. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Katja, for co-creation. And
Thank you.
we'll be back.
The end. Bye bye.
Bye.